Hello and welcome to this episode of the broadcast, the first of 2026. And I'm delighted to be joined by the whooping Susan Hope from Scottish Widows and the slightly more reserved Kelly Parsons from Broadstone. Hi guys, how are you?
Great, thank you. I'm very well.
Good.
Yeah, I love that.
Gonna get in the room.
Great this morning. It's meant to be Blue Monday, isn't it? It's certainly not. The sun is shining and we're talking about one of our favourite subjects. So
yes,
what's to be mad about?
Exactly.
So we're talking about gender in pensions and focusing on the gender pension gap in respect of women. So primarily we're going to talk about the Scottish Widows report. So Susan, just before we get going, do you want to introduce yourself, why you're here, and then we'll do Kelly, and then we'll get on to the talking through the report.
Happy to. So I'm delighted to be on here today on your first podcast of the year and my first chance to talk about the gender pension gap in 2026. My name's Susan Hope. I run a business development team at Scottish Widows by day. However, I'm here because my mum is still working. She's 70 because of some of these structural inequalities. My daughter's 19, about to have her own potentially six-figure gender pension gap before she's even got her LinkedIn profile up and running. And I am somewhere in the messy middle. 2 divorces, periods of self-employment, part-time employment. I have made every mistake. So I've got a unique perspective on the issues contributing to the gender pension gap. And I'm on a bit of a mission to try and close it as much as I possibly can by the time I retire.
Brilliant, good stuff. And so my name is Kelly Parsons. I'm a pension consultant by trade. I've been a pension consultant for 20 odd years now. And to be fair, the gender pension gap has been brought to light. I mean, I've been talking about it for so many years now, probably about 10, 12, maybe more years. It's really come to my mind and it frightens me. It worries me as a woman. I'm talking to one for my friends that don't, that don't really pay attention to their pensions, and for everybody that doesn't, but also just because it's just such a big issue at retirement. It's massive. And what I have been doing over the last 10, 15 years is talking to employers, anyone who will listen to me as well, a bit like Susan, really, just like talking about it and saying, look, you've got to take control, also help educate your staff, get people, aware of the issue. So yeah, something I feel really passionately about, and just hope to just raise that a little bit more with both employers and employees, people, just to make sure that they're aware.
Great. Okay. So the Scottish Widows report, women in retirement, does show that the gap is widening, not narrowing. So women are now on track to retire with £113,000 less than men on average. 113,000. I mean, that's just a huge number. And then looking at the income side of things, so the income gap is around 32%, with women retiring on £13,000 a year compared to men retiring on £19,000 a year. Some of those numbers are just, you couldn't see this because this is mainly an audio podcast, but Susan was doing the head exploding, sort of universal sign for head exploding, about how big those numbers are. So Susan, I mean, I invite you just to talk through some of the systemic issues that your report highlights. I think that's the best place for us to start.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And one of the main reasons I wanted to work with Scottish Widows was the work that they do on women's preparedness for retirement in the UK. We'll be going into this is the 21st year of research. We'll be going into the 22nd year this year of looking at how women are preparing for retirement. And last year there was a little glimmer of hope where, excuse the pun, where the gender pension gap was down to 30%, but we're back up to 32% this year. So women are doing better, but men are doing better. And as you rightly said, we've got this huge £113,000 gap manifesting as £13,000 for average females, £19,000 for males. So £6,000 year on year where women have less than men. And as a G7 nation, that feels really unacceptable to me, notwithstanding the personal element as a mum and a daughter as well. So we really have to do something about it. But you're right, a lot of this is baked into a financial system we're trying to navigate that wasn't built for us. So a few things at high level just to bring out. Firstly, we have the gender pay gap. Now, pleasingly, the gender pay gap is much narrower than its annoying little sister, the gender pension gap. But if we think about how long we've had the gender pay gap, the Equality Act has been around since 1976, and we still do not have equal pay. Broadly speaking, it's narrowed, but that is still an issue that we have to face. And if we think about even young women and men going into work for the first time, there is still an element of difference in pay at that stage. So that's the first element. But by far the most damaging element and the most damaging contributing factor to the gender pension gap is career breaks. And we'll talk a little bit in more detail about that. So that's something I definitely want to dive into today, but also give some action points for everyone listening. And then we have other ancillary things which are equally devastating for the individuals that they affect. So, for example, divorce is something I have personal experience of and has certainly affected my preparation. And then we have things like healthcare, we have menopause, and we also have a lack of joint financial planning for women, which can bring unexpected financial resilience questions when it's too late for women to do anything about it. So a bit of a perfect storm, you name it, there's a gap. We won't even get into the gender confidence gap, which we also have, the gender investment gap, the gender protection gap. We could talk about this all day, but there are so many gaps that women face, and a lot of them are unseen until it's too late.
Yeah, and I agree with you there on everything that you've just said. Obviously, Susan, it frightens me to death. And I've talked to a lot of employers over the years, and they kind of go, "Oh, we don't have a gender pension gap. I know, and we pay everybody the same." And I'm like, "Well, that's not actually true. You might not think that you're paying inappropriately or different for pensions, and you're paying really well, but you've got to remember that loads of ladies and men as well, but mostly ladies, isn't it, that will go to work and they'll take time out, they'll go part-time and do that, and they don't realize what's happening and the impact that is having on their pension. I mean, I'm lucky, I work in this industry, I've been thinking about it all, since I first started work at 18, pensions. But there's a lot of people who will go to work and not even think about their pension until all of a sudden they're 50 or whatever it is. All of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I quite like the idea of retiring. And you look back and go, well, actually, I've had 5 years out because I've had children. Or maybe longer, who knows? Or I've worked part-time for literally from the second I've had children, or I've took time out to look after parents or whatever. And it's just that, it's right from day dot. They don't really realize. I mean, I think at the beginning, the gap's much smaller, isn't it, Susan? You'll know this better than I. But it does expand literally from I think it's like from really when you start having your first child or whatever it is, and all the impacts that go on that. And I think we need to recognise that this is an issue and that the behaviours do matter, but it's not just the employer's responsibility. It's not just an employee's responsibility. It's not just the system's responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility to pay attention to this kind of thing and go, yeah, there's a problem there and it's not going away. And like Susan just said, it was 30% last year, this gap, but now it's got bigger again, which it made me want to cry when I heard the news when this was like, when it was launched, when you launched your stats a few months ago, actually, it was before Christmas. And I just look at it and go, oh my God, how are we going to make this better? And the best way really is we've got to look at the system. How can we change that and all that? But also look at how can we get this message out there? Because I can still talk about this. I'll talk about it all the time to my poor friends, go to the pub and they're like, don't talk about pensions, God, she's going to start wittering again. But I'm always like, well, what are you going to do? When you get to that point. We're not getting any younger.
Well, okay, before we get to worry about people getting older, let's worry about, like you said, Kelly just said, the year dot. Let's take it right back to the beginning. So the Scottish Widows report takes us through broadly three life parts of the life cycle of someone while they're working and hopefully saving into a pension. So Susan, can you start us off with sort of that person, that woman entering the workforce and working through towards their midlife phase? What can we look out for as issues, and what are the areas to focus on?
Happy to, but there's a couple of things I hope you don't mind. I really want to draw out that Kelly said that I've got a couple of extra comments on.
Sure.
The first one is male attitudes to the gender pension gap, right? We need to come together as a society to fix this. helping women close the gender pension gap is a job for everyone. Helping women does not disadvantage men. I've been speaking about this for 4 years now. I have men ask me, is this a thing? This is niche. There is no such thing as the gender pay gap. I've also heard recently on my socials, I'm really active on socials about this. It was your choice to stay at home and look after Tarquin, so it's your own fault. This type of comment is not helpful. Every man listening to this, you have women in your life that you love. We have to come together. This is a societal problem. It is inclusive. We've got to come together and help each other close this so that our daughters can have an equal retirement. That's my first point. Hope you don't mind me mentioning that, but it's so, I get all these comments all the time, and it's just not. This is not a gender war. I hate this gender narrative where we're pitching genders against each other. We really do have to come together to make this work. The second thing, Kelly, to touch on your point is, you're absolutely right. There's 3 spheres of responsibility here. We've got policy and legislation, and then we've got employer and trustee, potentially provider in here, and then we've got personal responsibility as well. I feel truly privileged that I get to span all of these 3 spheres of responsibility. But we need that, sorry for the corporate phrase, but top tier collaboration if we're going to get this closed anytime soon. And that's why I'm so happy to be on this call, because people on here will be crossing those 3 spans of responsibility. And then lastly, your point around getting to 50, I'm 51, I know it's difficult to believe, but getting to 50, and the maths is unforgiving at this point. It's too late almost. Yes, you can still control the controllables and get your house in order, but we really need to catch women at 18, David, to your point. And so I'll go back now to the original question on what to expect, what we could be doing at 18 to catch these women. So at 18 years old, what we're seeing is young women are ready to take control of their financial future, but they're in favour of digital first support. So any of you who did sales training back in the 90s was always taught about fear and greed, appeal to fear or appeal to greed. My daughter's 19. Her equivalent to that is appeal to her dopamine hit, her need for a dopamine hit immediately, or appeal to her FOMO. She is missing out on something that all of her friends are getting. That really appeals to young women, and they do see themselves as investors. 50% of young women see themselves as investors, which is brilliant in comparison to older women who do not. So the best thing to do here is appeal to the dopamine hit of free money. So I'm going to talk about my nephew very briefly because it applies to all young people. My nephew said to me last year on his first job, Auntie Susan, I'm not joining the pension scheme because £83 per month is too expensive. After my head exploded again with my emoji, and we had a chat, it was very clear that he was on a double matched scheme in a group personal pension plus tax relief. His £83 a month was turning into something like £312 per month every single month. He had no clue. None of his friends had a clue. He's on a graduate apprenticeship, very clever boy. We need to put this information into the hands of these young men and women so that they can take advantage of that compounding and that free money. That's the one thing I would love to see employers do, and as families having those conversations around the kitchen table. In that first policy sphere of responsibility, you know, Scottish Widows are lobbying for the implementation of the automatic enrolment recommendations that were done back in 2017, because that would also make a huge difference. So it's all about getting women to engage digitally in their 20s, or we'll lose them in their 30s when they're busy thinking about potentially having a career break and a family. So engaging differently. So I'm even on TikTok now, down with the kids on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're partnering, and I know a lot of providers are, Scottish Widows are partnering with financial influencers on TikTok and trying to engage in a different way. De facto did a Gen Z panel, I think back in 2023 or 24 now, and the response was overwhelming. Put it on TikTok and make it 24 seconds. Now, you and I all know T's and C's for providers, probably reading them out would take 10 minutes. So we've got a job on our hands and we need to change the way we engage. Sorry, quite a long answer there, David, but hopefully it'll give you a flavour of how we need to engage and what we need to get across quickly.
Yeah, no, it does. Kelly, do you want to come in on the employer angle a little bit here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think employers, they can do a lot. They can do an awful lot. You know, I mean, I do pension governance on a regular basis, and I sit down and we'll talk about what the gender pension, the gap is and what it actually looks like with people in different cohorts. So it's raising that awareness, making sure that employers are aware that this is an issue and is there. And do they really want, you know, I mean, women live longer as well, don't they, than men? So not only we've got a gender pension gap, but we've also got the fact that we're going to live longer in retirement. So we have more income needs. So it's just raising awareness. And I think you can do that. Employers can do this in lots and lots of different ways. I think they can, for the younger generation and for any generation really, that it's about education. So educate your staff, let them know. And this also really feeds in well to mental health and well-being, because you know, financial well-being is a real big issue on for the impact on mental health. So really help educate your staff on lots of different areas, not just the pension gap. I think that's really important. Other things that they could do, and some might not like this because it might cost them a bit of money, a bit of extra money. Don't auto-enroll from 22. Do it from as soon as they start, whatever age. Give them the option. Also, encourage employees to contribute the max into their pension and get that higher level of employer contribution. Take advantage of that. So many employers that will go, oh yes, we've got this, but we don't promote it. You know, again, it's going to cost a little bit of money, but it's still raising awareness. Other things that employers can do is kind of offer them the opportunity, offer employees or give them nuggets of information or nudges. So when we do know, you know, at any point really in careers, but particularly when people are going on maternity leave, give them action plans. And that's something that we're introducing here. We're saying, look, this is your maternity action plan. Not just think about the pram or the pushchair and the colour of the nursery, which is all very, very important. You know, it's great stuff. But also think about who's going to be taking the responsibility for paternity. Well, if you're going to get paternity leave as well involved, you know, get some of the parents, both parents taking time off and not just impacted. But also, I mean, if you know that you're going to think about having a child and you're 20, whatever it is, plan. Maybe think about putting a little bit, put a little bit more in the pension. So again, it's about education, because I don't think there's no way in God's earth when I was 20 that I'd have gone, I'll just pay an extra few percent. I mean, I was paying a decent amount in, but I'm like at 20, whatever, going, oh, I'll just pay 20 something percent in, or 50, I don't know, whatever it is, you know, putting that extra couple of percent in to cover that period of time that I'm having off. But it's just raise awareness, make people aware of this kind of thing. And I think employers can do that. Employers could help with that responsibility. So there's a lot that can be done, but employers are, I think it's really important. And education is something I keep on going back to time and time again. I'm delighted to hear that they're going to be bringing financial education into schools from 2027. So that's a new thing. Hopefully they'll be covering pensions. I don't know if they'll go into this level of detail, but, you know, also raising the awareness of it. But like you say, Susan, I think it's a lot of it is appealing to that younger generation where they are on TikTok and they are thinking about it. And my son I love the fact he's actually he was watching it yesterday. I went into his room, he's sitting in the dark, you know, with his hood over his head. I'm like, what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm just watching this guy about investing. And I'm like, brilliant. Whereas my daughter, she's the other end of the scale. She'll talk to you about lip glosses or whatever. You know, there are other brands, obviously, of lip gloss, but this is the kind of stuff that I'm like, oh God, I need to kind of. So I start trying to talk to her, but she's like, oh, Mom, I'm not interested. And I'm like, oh, okay, you will be in a few years' time. So
yeah, so much to pick up on there really quickly. On your points. So if an employer auto-enrolled at 18 instead of 22, or obviously promoted opt-in, someone on median earnings only throughout their whole career, it would make a difference of £48,000 to their pot, halving their gap.
Yeah.
If someone paid an extra 1.15% into their pension over the course of their career, whether that be tax relief, employer contribution, it would negate a 5-year break, which is again, you know, fantastic, worth knowing. And then the other thing, talking about your daughter, and I have to say, I am living proof this has worked. Alexa, my daughter, who I called her Alexa, it's a whole nother story for another day. She's not forgiven me yet. We have been on a 5-year journey she was very much like, oh mum, but we've been on a 5-year journey where it started with a bank card. It then went into me explaining my pay slip to her. We then went into day-to-day budgeting, then saving, then investing. She's 19. She's been on that journey with me. She's now investing. It's 25 quid a month. She's a student. It's not much, but bite-sized information, meeting her where she was when she wanted to know from me, has really worked with her. So I love the financial education. I love it, but I also love the kitchen table conversations when they're up for a chat.
I absolutely agree with those kitchen table conversations, and sometimes you do get the oh god, but it's so good having a positive role model, don't you think? I mean, this is something that employers can do is have a pension or a financial champion within the organization. And quite often when you've got an employer that has got an employee representative on the panel who then talks to staff and says how good it is and how advantageous it is, there's no advice there, it's just a positive role model. And I think that is so useful and so important. And you know what, I've come across people when they're at retirement and they've had, oh, someone told me not to bother with that, it was a complete waste of time and it was a DB pension scheme, and you're like, oh my god, you know, someone told me not to do, versus the person who did pay into it, paid that little and often into a DB or a defined contribution pension scheme, doesn't matter. It's just having somebody there telling you that it's a really good positive thing.
So true. Yeah. I've done calls before and then always talk about Rio, my nephew, in that example. And people message me later saying, I want an Auntie Susan. I think I'm going to be everyone's Auntie Susan.
Brilliant. You're my Auntie Susan.
Yeah, you're our Auntie Susan now.
I'm going to trademark it.
TikTok name, Auntie Susan. She's there for you.
There you go. I love it.
Auntie Susan's pension tips. I love it.
So another thing I wanted to key off was, Kelly, you were talking about maternity and going in and having that action plan. I know, Susan, I know there's been a breaking story, again, in the lead up to this recording, couldn't have been more perfectly timed. I know that's a good point for you just to come in on that and talk about some of the pitfalls perhaps around maternity, as well as some of the things to prepare for when you're going into it.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover here, so I'll try and keep it as concise as possible. So what our research found, first of all, was that 40% of women didn't financially plan for their career break. And that meant that 51% of them struggled financially while they were off on their career break. So what we need to do, and as a provider, we have fully taken that on board, what we need to do is give these individual women their maternity plan, but give them proof points so that they understand pounds and pence what that break is going to look like. So we have a career break modeler now that women can play about with well in advance of them going anywhere, and they can see what impact different levels of time off are going to have on their pension. And that allows them to have that conversation as a family unit about, here is the impact to my pension, fully understand what their employer obligation is with those contributions while they're off, and then have the conversation with their partner. The story that was in the Times and then redone in the Sunday Times yesterday was around many women whose contribution has been incorrect while they've been off. So exacerbating their gender pension gap without them even knowing it. So again, Kelly, I know you'll touch on this from an employer perspective. Putting the proof points in the individual's hands before they go off. If I had that before I had Alexa, my action would have been different. So there's that's the kind of preemptive work. And then there is making sure that you correctly deal with the maternity contribution while the employee is off. You know, I also salary exchange is my other passion. I love salary exchange to a kind of geeky level. The amount of questions I get daily from employers and advisors wanting to understand how salary exchange interacts with auto enrolment and maternity leave would illustrate to me that it's not widely understood.
Do you know what? I absolutely agree with that. There's so many occasions when I've spoke to an employer and they might not have necessarily done it correctly. They might have reduced the amount that was been paid in on behalf of that person that was going on maternity leave. And the reality is that when you're doing salary exchange, obviously this is one of the drawbacks for an employer, I guess, when an employee goes on mat leave, is that they are going to have to sustain that level of contribution at the current level that it is. You legally have to, end of. You can't deduct money out of the take-home pay if they're on statutory minimum wage. Cannot be done by salary sacrifice. So you just got to remember these things. But it's a good thing for the lady or the person going off on maternity leave, because they will maintain their pension contribution throughout. And I think employers just need to be really careful that they need to plan for this as well, because it is going to be a cost to them. But I think overall salary exchange or salary sacrifice, whatever we want to call it, means the same thing, is still it's still really positive for an employer. It's still a really, it's advantageous for them on the long term. And they've just got to make sure that they're doing it properly. So it is worthwhile checking it over, getting somebody to give them a quick review and make sure, yeah, that's absolutely right, it's done correctly, and you're not detrimenting the employee and reducing their pension contribution, because you can't do that. You're just not allowed to when they're getting paid. So it's like you say, Susan, it's a brilliant thing. I love salary exchange, and even in 2029, when it's going to get capped, it still will have this positive impact for an employee. So it's still worth continuing post 2029 when things do change in the future.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So we're sorted in I'm going to call it the midlife section of our person's life. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but that's what I'm going to use. So we've touched on maternity. That's kind of it's the interim bit, isn't it, between sort of early starters getting into midlife. So Susan, what else do we think about for your midlife earner worker when she's in this period? And I think, anecdotally, I think this is the area where the pension gap starts to widen the most. So what other areas, are impacting women's pensions here?
So there's a few things to know, and the first thing is always control your controllables. So understand your three main components of your retirement income, notwithstanding other asset types. So make sure that you understand your state pension entitlement and date, and that's your HMRC app. Part of the reason my mum's still working to 70 is because she was completely, and I can say this honestly, she was completely unaware she was not retiring at 60, and she was actually going to be 65 in 11 months, I think, at that point. That was devastating to our family, and I see that now manifest day to day. She's 70, she should not be working. Like you were saying earlier, Kelly, made you cry about the stats earlier, like that makes me cry.
I can imagine.
And
yeah.
It's the she feels shame, and that's what I hate. Like she's done nothing wrong. She brought my brother and I up. She had 2 divorces. She was a multi-jobber. She did her best, and she's still working at 70, and she feels shame. That's just not acceptable to me. And if we go back to the divorce point, so HMRC, understand your state pension, understand when it is, understand what your gaps are, and then try and plug them. Make sure you've got your credits. Second thing, as we've talked about, make sure you understand your workplace pension and the benefit of that employer contribution. And then we've not talked about this yet, but make sure that you're not part of that 31 billion in untraced pensions in the UK. Everyone should be having the kitchen table conversation about that. So at least the women at this stage can control the controllables and understand what their start point is. Unfortunately, yes, this is the age where divorces are more prevalent. And what I would say about this is our research in 2024 showed that 60% of women did not discuss pension in retirement, 6 out of 10. The average loss for not doing that is around £77,000, which again is huge. So if you think about that coupled with earlier contributions, you've almost closed your gap. But you'll probably remember the story a few years ago on divorce where the man wanted his kidney back. He had given his wife a kidney and he wanted it back because they were getting divorced.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember that. Wow.
So you've got people going to court, more people going to court over the family dog than the pension, fighting over Christmas lights, like really random things are being fought over, while the workplace pension's sitting over in the corner quietly. So that is a huge consideration, and we would like that to be, mandated that must be taken into consideration. And then I know we'll move on to kind of later life, but just overall joint financial planning, which starts when people get together. I've just done some comments for Country Wedding magazine to actually talk about, let's get this sorted and let's get our kind of money life mapped out before you take the plunge. Lots of couples argue over money, so it's really important to start treating that as a family unit from the moment that you join together. I don't think there's anything else on that one, David. Is there anything I've missed, you think? Or is there anything, Kelly, you want to jump in on?
I was just going to say on the divorce piece, that's something, again, that we talk about in education. Employers can help a bit. We have a divorce flyer action plan, what you can do in scenarios when there is divorce on the cards, and it always raises the issue, or the pension, because like you say, massive amount of employees don't consider that pension pot and will just happily walk away from the relationship without even accounted for that. And it can be and when you are the main carer, your opportunity for income is normally considered quite a lot less than the person who may be full-time, working. So you do need to make sure that you are getting your fair cut of the pie here. I really think that's so important. Yeah, I think that covers it.
I think there was one thing as well that when we were planning this, we were talking about how the partner, I think it's probably part of your thing about the planning for it together. The partner could help. If it was permissible, we probably would like to see a policy development where the partner could pay into the woman's pension pot, if possible, or some kind of joint pension contribution sharing thing to help bridge that gap and make sure they're not being left too far behind. I think that'd be an interesting thing to think about with the policy. Your next policy chat, Susan, you'll have to stick that idea in front of the ministers and see how it goes.
That's Pensions Pete, our head of policy, Pete Glancy, who would be taking that forward. But I mean, just to pick up on your point, partners can contribute to their spouse's pension, as we know already. So they can contribute up to the tune of £3,600 a year gross, what actually costs them £2,880. So that could be done. Just lastly, as we talk about women approaching retirement, there has been an interesting development this year around housing equity, because what we've seen is over 80% of women over age 55 own a house either on their own or with a partner. And what I think the FCA are quite keen on this is for people to look at all of their assets in entirety, providing a retirement income. So I think our report next year might have a little bit more on that. Is like, how do we use the levers that we can to try and close our own gender pension gaps in the absence of any large policy changes in the short term? And then the last point is around single life annuities. So we know that 85% of annuities are purchased on a single life basis. We know that generally speaking, men have the pot that has the larger value. We know that women live longer. So if someone has chased the rate, and I understand why you would do that, absolutely I do, you could have a point where a woman has financial vulnerability that she had no clue was coming.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, that comes down to getting either advice or, proper guidance around what you can or should be doing as a couple, as a unit, as a family, as opposed to, oh, I'm just going to go and set this up and, oh, that's the best rate, I'll take that one. The reality is you need to really think about those. And I've seen it before as well. People coming to me and saying, oh, my husband died and we've got no income now coming into the household. Hence why I've had to pick up more hours and stuff. This is like people in their 50s and 60s who were thinking retirement was on the cards, but it's not anymore. And it's like, oh, hold on, I'm not going to be able to retire on the amount or the level of income because their partner has died and that income died with them, sadly.
Exactly. And I think that's why I feel so strongly about engaging people from a really young age.
Yeah, I agree.
Because culturally, you can start to see the cultural shift. You can start to see more men looking to take shared parental leave, but we still have a lack of real role models and celebration around that. But you do start to see a shift. If we could see that family unit, that family planning as a unit early, that wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen in divorce. It wouldn't happen at annuity purchase time. Like, it would be very different. I mean, maybe that's utopia, maybe I'm being naive, but that's what I would really like to see.
Do you know what? I think the younger generation are now quite open to that kind of stuff. I think we're seeing it a lot more. I mean, I asked my kids about lots of things, as you can imagine, and one of them is about, do you think there's a reason why, as a boy or as a girl, that you should be doing anything differently or different expectations? And both of them look like blankly as like, why would this be an issue? We're equal in this. And so, you know what? I think they're very malleable and can be educated. So let's do it. Let's be really positive. Get these. Yeah, it should be equal, 100%.
Okay, you both transitioned yourselves onto the retirement conversation perfectly without needing me, so that was brilliant. But I just want to double check there wasn't anything else you want to talk about that transition phase to retirement that we haven't talked about. I mean, the only thing I had, just while you're thinking, was around similar to the point you're making around the single life annuity purchase, is that thing around pension freedoms, which is a lot of people think it's fantastic and people can spend the money when they need it. Every pound spent there isn't a pound that's going to be left to your partner or your family when you pass away, because you'll have spent it. And that's the other loss that kind of isn't quite as visible as buying a single life annuity that dies with the annuitant. If you spend that money, that isn't money that's going to be left. So every pound spent, you need to think, am I spending this for the good of the household or the family, or is it just another golf trip? Do you need that golf trip? That kind of.
Do you really need the golf trip? Do you really?
Yeah. I don't want to start any family arguments, about what what people are doing in their spare time. But it's a thing that can, be overlooked a little bit when planning retirement spending.
I mean, this is not directly related, but something I do feel positive about is targeted support. And I do believe that targeted support will fill quite a big gap that we have. And I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like for certain cohorts and how we can help deliver that as a provider. So that's something I'm really looking forward to seeing, and I think that will help.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that targeted support is possibly either going to get the best value for money, the best best money in retirement, and also making sure that it's going to cover and look after both parties if there is if there is a couple involved and things like that. So absolutely vital, really. I think this support that's going to be needed going forward.
I mean, one stat that I'm conscious of time, but one stat that I do feel really strongly about was that 60% of women that we surveyed either didn't know or knew that it wouldn't be them looking after their own money in retirement. Now, that's a scary stat to me. I would love it if we can get next 5-7 years where that's 1 in 10 or 2 in 10. We work really hard. We all do. Men, women, whatever gender you identify as, we all work really hard. That is our money that we have worked hard for, that we should take responsibility for managing to design our life. So what can we do across all spheres of responsibility to make sure that that's something we want to do? I'm darn sure I will be managing my money in retirement so that it gives me the type of retirement I want. So that was a real red flag for me, that women feel very disengaged with their pension. 45% didn't feel confident managing their pension, and 50% didn't feel like investors. And given that if you've got a workplace pension, you're an investor, we've got some work to do there.
Yeah. Okay. So you got it right, Susan. We are a bit tight on time.
I know, it's me. Sorry.
No. It's okay. But I just want to give you both a chance just to sum up any of your sort of closing, overarching thoughts. I'm going to sort of squint at the screen, try and see both at the same time. Who looks like they want to go first?
I'm happy to go.
I don't mind. Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm happy to go. What I would say is, obviously, thank you for the opportunity to chat about this, because we do need to raise awareness, but then more than that, I would urge the audience, if we can, to think about what sphere of responsibility you sit in and do something to move this agenda forward, because without everyone working together, we will not close the gender pension gap. And our daughters do, Kelly, as you said, our daughters deserve a fair retirement, nothing more, nothing less.
And from my point of view, it would be educate yourself, learn, go out and be greedy for information about your pensions, your future, your life, go for it. But also from the point of view of an employer, I think it's so important. You've got employees trust employers. They look after their money. They look through the payroll. They quite typically do trust them. So if you can educate them by somebody, obviously not you personally, but like get a trusted advisor or get into programs, whatever it is, help educate people, educate them to understand a little bit about, the basics, even about APRs. Kids don't always know about this sort of stuff, but then talk about the pensions and all different aspects of it. I think we just have a responsibility really to do this. Everybody, I try and educate constantly, and I just love it if everybody took advantage of that and try and either learn themselves or educate other people, really.
That's great. Thank you. I think I'll take a quick takeaway just because chair's prerogative. But I think the thing that, and you were hinting at it, Susan, earlier, a bit about some people have a bias against this as a topic. And I think an objection I often hear when we talk about this is it's just a labour market issue. If you pay people the same amount, then that will fix it. And that you're both shaking your heads for you, a listener. They're both shaking their heads at me. And I think that coming through from this 30-minute or so conversation is that there is so much more that can be done, and there are so many other barriers to helping women get better outcomes in their pensions than just, I'll just pay them the same amount, it will work itself out. You know, that isn't it. It is part of it, but that isn't it. And I think that's, for me, as someone who's perhaps not as well informed as you guys on this topic, well, I'm definitely not as well informed as you guys on this topic. You know, that's the takeaway I'm taking from this. There's a lot more to this conversation than just that. So
definitely.
So David, what are you going to do? What are you signing up to? What's your pledge?
I'm going to talk to my daughter. She's 14.
Good.
And I will talk to my daughter and educate her about pensions and everything else. I mean, I would do that anyway, but I will do that even more than I would have done. Being pensions Dave and stuff, you know, that's kind of my life.
She can have access to Auntie Susan. It's fine.
Exactly.
She probably already is. She's following you on TikTok.
I love a bit of outsourced parenting. Fantastic. Thank you for the offer, Auntie Susan. Right. So leaves it me to thank you on behalf of the listeners. Thank you both for your knowledge sharing today, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of the broadcast, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks.